Hello, welcome. My name is Leo Salazar. Welcome to our webinar today. We're looking at culture leadership. How can I get my international team on a roll? It's a good message for us to begin. We're going to be talking about culture today. What is culture? How does culture have an influence on you and your team that you're managing within your company? How does culture influence your organization? And we're going to look at what is culture made of and how you can use it as a dynamic to increase your productivity, your performance, and your team's performance. I'm going to give a little bit of an introduction of Baak. First, I want to ask a little technical detail. If you can hear me, okay, please type in the chat underneath. You can see it right here, chat, and it's in Dutch. Iedereen means everybody. Thank you, Hein. I can also read what you're chatting. So if you have a question, please ask. I'm not sure if I can get to everybody's questions today, if you have questions, but I will do my best. We do have your email addresses, so if you have a question and we don't get to it during this presentation, I will be sure to answer afterwards. So let's begin. De Baak is a leadership institute in the Netherlands. Oops, sorry. Founded just after the Second World War to help Dutch companies, European companies, rebuild after World War II. The VNO-NCW was the original sponsor of De Baak, and it is the largest employers organization in the Netherlands. There are two locations of De Baak, one in Driebergen, that's where we are now, it's here in the forest, and the other one in Noordwijk on the sea, 240 employees, about half of them in hospitality, hotel, restaurant, and so on, back office, and the other half in learning and development, learning programs for companies, for individuals. 31 international partners and 5 distance learning, blended learning partners as well. Yeah, I'm one of those associates, so I'm one of the ones involved with doing training, developing programs, and helping individuals develop themselves and also to learn. If I'm speaking a little bit fast, excuse me. We have a lot of ground to cover in the next, let me see, 55 minutes. Hopefully we'll last an hour today. If you, like I said, if you have a question, please post it in the chat. And yeah, let's begin. These are some of the locations of De Baak. The beautiful Maitland Theater in Driebergen, Maitland named after the founder of De Baak, and also the location at the sea. De Baak's focus is on leadership, but also talent, developing talent, innovation, organizational culture, change management, and coaching, including team coaching. Yeah, De Baak is a long-standing Dutch institution, but also international. And it has to do with learning. It has to do with experiential learning. There's a famous quote, I'm sure you're familiar with it. I see and I forget. I hear and I remember. I do and I understand. So it means by doing is how you best learn. And there are 3 dynamics to learning. We'll come back to that later. Attitude, knowledge, and skills. You can't learn without all 3 of those together. And I'll explain a little bit what that has to do with culture and how how culture can both influence and hinder learning. But first, a little bit about myself. I'm born and raised in California, Riverside, California. Beautiful. If you ever get the chance to go there, please do. One of you asked about my profile, said that I mentioned that I haven't lived regularly in the Republic of California since 1979. I've been working in international, intercultural environments. And Ilona asked, yeah, Republic. I thought California was part of the United States. It is now, but that is a nod to my own history. And our family is one of the last Spanish governors of California, before it was in the United States, when it was a part of the Mexico, the territory of Mexico. Yeah, why do I mention that? You know, pretty pictures, nice, California, beautiful. The reason I mention that is because where I was born, into what circumstances, my family, my environment, my influences in growing up, these are all a part of who I am, and they're all a part of my culture, just like all of you. Each of you has your own origins, your own influences, and you bring with you your own culture. And this is all very well and good when I'm in my own environment. And everybody understands each other. Everybody understands what the rules of the game are. However, when I'm outside of that familiar environment, what then? The natural reaction is a bit uncomfortable. How am I going to interact with somebody if the rules of the game aren't completely clear? And that's what we're going to talk about. What are the rules of the game, and how can you adapt yourself to the other in helping both of you do better considering your different cultures. We'll say goodbye to California now. Oops, okay. Culture leadership, our learning objectives for today. Now, it's a big word, learning objectives. This is an introduction into what I do with individuals and companies for Baak. Number one, see culture. Recognize if a problem has a cultural origin at its base. Number two, bridging to other cultures. And we will go over a model, a very robust model, to help you interact with different cultures to great value. Number three, developing yourself and your team to achieve value by leveraging cultural differences. And number four, spreading awareness and understanding and appreciation of cultural differences and what value that they can give to the organization. Before we go further, a very quick poll. We'll do this very informally. I won't have you fill in. Kita, can we get the next slide? Yeah, that's good. Five statements. Oops, Kita's gone away. I hope you can still hear me. Oh, there we go. Okay, good. Thank you. By the way, Kita is literally behind the screen. So thank you, Kita, for facilitating today. And also thank you to Baak, by the way. I forgot to mention for hosting me and being a part of this experience. The whole Baak team has been busy in promoting today's webinar, so I'm very happy for their support. So, 5 statements. 1, we're in my country. Things should be done my way. 2, we're all working for the same company. I focus on our mutual corporate values. Number 3, I'm aware that people see things differently, and I try to understand how that fits in with my way. 4, it's up to me to adapt if I can expect my team to perform. And number 5, by working and adapting together, we have the chance to create something new. If you'll use those as 1 through 5, please choose one and type it in the chat, if you will.
We have a poll. We can make it a poll.
Oh, okay. Kita says we can make it a poll. So we'll do this on the fly. This is also very culturally oriented, by the way, being able to do things on the fly. There we are. Can you see that? Kita, can they see that?
Yes.
Please choose one. Okay, very good. Okay, good. We have 2/3 of you have chosen number 5. By working and adapting together, we have the chance to create something new. And 1/3 of you, roughly, have chosen the third one. I'm aware that people see things differently. Good. Okay, good. Thank you. Thank you, Kita. And thank you for participating. It's very nice. It's also pretty much what I expected. I assume that a good many of you are already culturally aware. Most people who are not yet culturally aware, or at the very least focus on the benefits of the commonalities of different cultures, it's not an area that they explore very readily. And what I'm hoping to show is that how we can do explore it, be aware of it, and use those dynamics towards better performance. Yeah, this is what I expected. Very quickly, this is the so-called Bennett scale. It shows the five dimensions, actually there's six, going from all the way from denial, defense, minimization, acceptance, adaptation, and integration, going from a very ethnocentric, in other words, my culture is the best in the world, and all other cultures are subservient to that, to ethno-relative, where you understand that the world is a big place with very many different cultures. Yeah, is there an ideal? Of course not. Is there a need? I think very much so, yes. But what is that need, and how do we go about responding to that? What I think is interesting is that, of course, I see culture everywhere, in all things. But as they say, if the only tool you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. Uh, I don't know if that's necessarily the case, but yeah. When I hear statements, and these are actual statements that I've had from clients, and some clients who minimize culture and its influence on what they're doing. For example, the supplier, he keeps calling back and asking all these questions. We had a meeting last week with his boss. I don't know why he keeps calling me. Everything was clear. Or, we both signed the same contract. I don't know what the problem is. Another one is, I asked her about it and she said it was fine. Is there a problem? And another one was, I sent the email, he should have understood it. Now, to me, depending on the environment, of course, almost every single one of those statements has a cultural element to it. What is culture? Let's address that before we go any further. Very textbook definition. This is from Carrot Holsteda. I've got a few books to share with you. Carrot Holsteda, Culture is an Organization, Software of the Mind. And I love that terminology that he uses, software, because software is programmed. The shared knowledge, beliefs, values, and behaviors and ways of thinking among members of society. And number two, the collective mental programming, which distinguishes one group or category of people from another. Now, if you'll notice, this may or may not have anything to do with different countries. For example, you can apply a culture definition to just about any demographic difference. Age, for example, gender, man, woman, or sexuality. Also looking at technical people versus non-technical people, or somebody who was born in the north of the country and you come from the south of the country. All of these are, these people are acting under influences that they had while growing up, for example, and have different cultures than you do. So different cultures doesn't necessarily mean international. It can also mean your own people around the table. Many people, when they look at cultures, they depend on stereotypes. And stereotypes are sometimes handy, and I'll show a short film in a couple of minutes that demonstrates that. However, they're also dangerous. And stereotypes, unfortunately, some people wonder, why is stereotypes bad per se? It helps me, it gives me a handle that I can latch onto. Peter, we're not getting the next slide. Can you? Yeah. This is a metaphor, if you will, of culture. We see on the surface clothing, food, behavior, language, customs. These are the things that we see in front of us that tell us that we're dealing with a different culture. But underneath the surface, where we can't see, then you come into norms, practices, attitudes, judgments, understanding, assumptions, beliefs, and at the very bottom, your very core values. Stereotypes rely on what is above the water, what you can see. And when you rely on stereotypes, and often, unfortunately, when we make fun of people or satirize them, we are using their stereotypes, what we can see. What that does is that devalues a group. It negates the potential value that they have for you, for a company, for themselves, if you only depend on what you can see. And I've always used a saying, it's not for you as a different person to prove to me your value. It's up to me to discover that value in you. That's where the responsibility lies. How can we, as responsible individuals, find the best out of the people around us? All right, these are all very technical terms. What does culture look like? How can you tell that somebody is from a different culture? For example, very many people, business people, for example, have a standard global way of dressing. Suit, tie, or no tie, as the case may be. How can you tell that from a different culture? One way to tell is by the rituals, patterns, behaviors that they exhibit. And this is something that we need to be open for. Kita? Thank you. I like to use my own culture as a comparison because I run the risk of not offending anybody. And one of the rituals in North American, United States, I should be more specific, society, is the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. School children to this day still do this every day at the beginning of class. And not just school children, also at meetings, at public meetings, city council meetings, always begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. People outside of the culture find that unusual. Why should you do that? I thought America was the land of the free and the individual. Why do you feel compelled to all stand together, place your hand over your heart, and place your hand over your heart and repeat this oath with each other? Isn't it implied? Yes and no. I'm not going to explain American culture. However, this is one of the symbols, rituals, that denotes U.S. culture in comparison with other cultures. This is very important to note. Observing culture is only useful for our purposes as it relates to other cultures. Making an objective observation about a single culture is dangerous because it leads to assumptions and it leads to judgments, value judgments. You need to look at it in comparison in order to know what to do with it. This is an example of culture. Let me show you, and it's a very visible symbol of culture, a ritual, if you will. Let me show you another one that's a little. I'll give you two examples. One example that works, and one example that doesn't work. In how do we discover what culture is? What this is a publication that was made by the German newspaper Bild. And the purpose of this publication, a 4-page document, very compact, was to give to refugees, asylum seekers, who have come into Germany in recent months, from Syria predominantly, but also from other countries, seeking asylum in Germany. And this document is intended to give them very practical information. For example, how to enroll your children in school, where are the registration centers, applying for government assistance, for example. And it also includes a map of Berlin, as you can see. This works. It worked very well for two reasons. Number one, it's very practical, useful, basic information that meets very basic needs. Number two, and even more important, it's in the language of the target group. And when I say the language of the target group, I don't necessarily mean in Arabic. I also mean when a refugee, an asylum, somebody seeking asylum, looks at this, they see pictures that they're familiar with, pictures of themselves, pictures of people like them, pictures of where they are. You see at the upper left the pictures of the tents where some are living. So it speaks to them. They feel a sense of identity. Um, this is very important for helping people feel comfortable inside of a culture. Do people feel a sense of belonging? Do they feel valued in this culture? That's what works. Let me show you something very, very similar, which doesn't work so well. Mr. Sigmar Gabriel, bless his heart, from the SPD in Germany, saw this, saw what a success it was, and thought, you know, we need to do more to help the refugees assimilate into our society. Let's find a way to explain to them what the rules are. What better way to explain to people what rules are of a society than giving them a copy of our Constitution in Arabic? Then they can read it and they know exactly what the rules are. Well intended, but unfortunately not a success. And why? Why do you think this was not necessarily a success? Oh, we're getting somebody reacting. Thank you very much. The rest of you can chime in also, if you will. Does not meet the needs of the refugees at the specific moment. That's a good one. It's not, yeah, somebody would get the document and you can see the, oops, other side, the document there on the right. It's not a format they would normally use. Good, good. Okay. Keep adding to it. It's not visual, easy to understand, not understandable day-to-day language. Very good, very good. Even I've read the English translation and I can't understand it either. The only way that this would be useful in any possible way is if they would have teams of legal experts to explain exactly the history behind this document, its application, what is it for. A constitution is a living document. It's something that evolves with every country that has a basic rule of law, constitution. It's not something that's written in stone. It's something that develops, changes, evolves with changes in society. It's meant to support society and its changes, not necessarily to hinder it. So aside from the format and the that is very dry, it's just not very useful. Okay. Maybe you're thinking to yourself, okay, great, Leo, nice stories. But what does this have to do with my team, my company, and so on? Companies also have their own written rules that they like to share with their employees to help them become more involved with the company values. Kita, can we go one further? Oh, there we go. Yeah. This is from a client of mine. It's a Northern European company. And this is a visualization, a very nice visualization. People see themselves in it, of their corporate values. Leadership by example, togetherness, enthusiasm, accept and delegate responsibility. Yes, all very good values. The problem is that the application of each of these values is entirely different, or at least different enough, in different cultures, in different countries. And the company is very proud of, and rightly so, with their corporate values and their corporate vision. And they're very much on promoting We're all one global company. We have the same vision for the company over the whole world. Yeah, that's fine coming from Northern Europe. However, when you travel to other markets in other countries, this has a very different application. I'll give you a very quick example. With this client, they were rolling out, for example, a new corporate vision statement, and they wanted everybody to be on board. So it was one of these rah exercises where different locations would organize regionally a coming together and celebrating of the company values. These are wonderful, and they can be very useful for companies. One of the markets that they were developing was in Asia, and nobody would come to the event. Nobody. It was a big zero. And the organizer said to us, I don't understand. You know, this we're all one company, one vision, and they're just not participating. Well, did you ask them? Yes, I did. What was the response? They said that the reaction was, okay, company vision, this will cost me a whole day. Uh, how do I earn money with this? How does this bring me customers? What's my bottom line? Very much commercially driven, very much looking at what does this get me? And yeah, this shows how corporate values need to be adapted depending on what market you're in. Unfortunately, you run into this sort of situation where you're only looking at the rules and you're trying to apply them in every environment, everywhere. We all have our own interpretation. We all see something in our own way. We all have our different sets of glasses on, and it's up to us to decide what we do with that. How do we apply it? I'd like to show you a little bit of a film, and this film is very short. It's very quick, so I hope you can follow it. And it's an introduction to the model that we're going to explore. Just a moment. Kita, can you play the film?
Bingo. Asians.
You can't be serious.
You never get behind people traveling with infants. Never seen a stroller collapse in less than 20 minutes. Old people are worse. Their bodies are littered with hidden metal, and they never seem to appreciate how little time they have left on Earth. There you go. 5 words, randomly selected for additional screening. Asians. They pack light, travel efficiently, and they got a thing for slip-on shoes. God love them.
That's racist.
Unlike my mother, I stereotype. It's faster.
Okay, thank you, Kita. Appreciate it. Yeah. Stereotyping. Did it work? Yeah, it worked. Was it racist? Not necessarily. Racist is that superiority. My race is superior to others. Was it flexible? Did it lend itself to a variety of environments? Was it really a tool that he could use in other situations? No, of course not. But it shows, and in fact, if you look at it again, it's a little bit of a. You could have also had Asian elderly or Asians who were being controlled by the customs. But it's a great movie, by the way. Up in the Air with George Clooney. Yeah, highly recommended. Good. Let's go to the model. We're a little more than halfway through our time, so we'll have to make some speed. There we go. 3 phases, 3 steps. Very simple. Simple tools are the best. Number 1, mapping, understanding the differences. Number 2, bridging, communicating across these differences. And number 3, integrating, building on these differences for synergy. This model was, excuses, sorry about that. Not quite sure what happened, but okay. Which is cultural also. It's not just the accident that happened, but how do you deal with that? Do you throw your hands up in the air and say, ah, it's happened, nothing to do? Or do you stress about it and say, I planned this for weeks? Or do you simply, yeah, try to do what you can to get back in the air? And Kita did that. Thank you very much, Kita, for jumping to the rescue. All right, back to the webinar. I'm glad everybody's back. I see lots of wonderful comments. Thank you. I'm glad you're staying with us. Mapping. Let's go through this one by one. The first step, oops, is how do we see what we're dealing with? You all know what a map is, correct? Just a moment. There we go. I bought this because, yeah, to show. I don't know if you can see. Yes. This is a 3D analog version of Google Maps. For those of you born after 1995, perhaps you haven't seen one. It's printed on paper, and you can find your way by a grid. How do they make these maps? These maps are made by cartographers, scientific, technical people who define the territory. They draw their map, and they assess, okay, how do I use this to find my way? It's objective, it's scientific, it's measurable. You don't say, for example, well, there we go. Okay, sorry, I was on mute. Yeah, these maps are made by technical people in order to help people find their way. For those of you born after 1995, no, excuse me, oh, you up. Am I out? Can you hear me? Mike is dead. I killed it. Sorry, my apologies. Okay, good, thank you. Yeah, map. How do we, these maps are made technically, scientifically, and objectively. Very, very important. It's possible to measure with these maps. For example, you don't say, well, you know, Elizabethtown, New Jersey. Who's going to go to New Jersey? We'll spend less time mapping New Jersey. Or, yeah, my mother-in-law lives uptown. We'll just ignore that for now. No, you make a map that everybody can use because it's accurate, or at least reasonably accurate. Anyway, we also map in culture. We see things, and we observe, we measure, hopefully scientifically, technically. And one of the ways that we measure is by using analysis, by using intercultural analysis. And one of my favorite that I love to use is from the IBI, Intercultural Business Institute. Here's a book, Intercultural Readiness, from my friend and colleague, Dr. Ursula Brinkmann. And it's quite a useful book and a very useful tool. It helps you get a bead on what is my culture, because you always look at yourself first before you start looking at other cultures. Handy is to have your team that you're dealing with, international team or intercultural team, all take the same test, so you all have a map of each other's cultures. By the way, we will send links and more information about the books with the follow-up. What do you get when you've measured your mapping? You get dimensions, cultural dimensions. Many people use the dimensions of Hofstede. Hofstede we saw already with the definition of culture. Can we get the next slide, Kita? Oh, okay. There's Ursula's website, beautiful website, by the way, brand new. Also recommended as a newsletter and blog, very active on social media. This is another alternative, and I use the intercultural readiness, the IRC, I use for corporate clients when we have the time to invest in such analysis. When we're doing our workshops, our more abbreviated programs, and also, for example, for culture coaching, we use a more simplified version. And a cultural survey is one example of it. You see, for example, on the left-hand side, statements such as, I feel most comfortable when, among family, children are taught that their opinion matters as much as that of their parents. Other extreme, among family, children are taught that they should not question the authority of their parents. Now, you can imagine what environments these occur in, and where you sit on this scale can be any of the 5 ranges. For example, look down to the bottom. At work, people constantly challenge their bosses. It is often hard to tell who is managing and who is being managed. The other extreme, at work, the boss makes the decisions, then uses close guidance and control. People accept this as the boss's responsibility and out of respect for him. This is a very important dimension. I'm sure some of you are familiar with a very egalitarian structure, where you can't tell who is the boss and who is the employee. Open doors, for example, at the very minimum, to a very strict command and control relationship with your superiors. In that case, when the boss says jump, your only reaction is how high. These are, there we are. These are 5 dimensions of Caird-Hofstede. One of them, and that is power distance. How does a society deal with power? The other 4 are individualism versus a collective. How much does a society accept people who are individuals and go their own way instead of being part of the group? Masculinity, what this refers to is how, in fact, let me go, I can't go through all of these today. Yeah, masculinity, traditional male and female roles. The man is the provider, and the female, the woman, is the caretaker, caregiver in the home. You see high MAS, low MAS. This measures the quality, the dimension of these different cultural characteristics. Uncertainty avoidance, and this is how does a society deal with uncertain situations? Are there rules in place to help people understand or help people structure and deal with unpredictability? The last is long-term orientation, and Professor Hofstede added this relatively recently in 1990s. For me, 1990s are relatively recently. Dealing with how does a society, how does a culture deal with short versus long-term ways of looking at the world. There's a 6th that has been added recently. If you go to the website of Professor Hofstede, Hofstede Center, you can Google, we'll provide it to you, gives a very handy online way of comparing different countries, of looking at a particular culture and seeing how does it measure in comparison with another culture. And yeah, this is all part of mapping. This is all part of how do we know what the other culture on the other side of the table is seeing and reacting to. I'd like to tell you a little bit about one of our clients that we worked with. A large global company, very, very many nationalities in the company, and it was fascinating to see the different cultural dimensions that were next to each other. We had them do, we used one of the analyses, IRC, and we came up with a profile. And this shows, I'm going to show you only 4 of the dimensions. The different people, each of the bars is a different person in the group from a different country. And this simply shows the measurement of their particular country. For example, if somebody is born in Norway, they have, according to Professor Hofstede, their behavior exhibits low masculinity, low power distance, and so on. You see that here, versus, for example, Russia or Latin American countries, where there's a very high power distance. The boss is the boss. And you see very much people who are dealing with authority in very different ways. This one is individualism. The score of 91 is from the United States. Very, very high. And this says that Americans, North Americans, value individualism very, very highly. Beautiful masculinity. Yeah, very, very high in many of the Eastern European countries. Also India, China, US also, Italy, and very, very low on the masculinity scale. What does that mean? That means that people from a low masculinity culture care very much for the group, care very much for the collective. You can also be a high individualism while at the same time being very low masculinity. Those are all details. And we will eventually, when you work with us, be mapping each other and finding out exactly what is our culture and how can we deal with people from different cultures. But that's not all. The next step is bridging. If you simply have the knowledge of different cultures, frankly, that doesn't help you very much. Because then you have a measurement, you have your map, for example, and you say, okay, I got my map, but what do I do with it? The map itself isn't going to bring me anywhere. It may point me in a particular direction, but how do I go? And it's very important to understand that with working with different cultures, it's not enough to simply know from one side what the culture is. You also have to know what the other side is. I have a question for you. What do you need to build a bridge? What's the first thing that you need before building a bridge? What is the very first thing? I'm very curious what some of you come up with. The very first thing necessary for building a bridge. Can you type a couple of stable bases and a good idea? Excellent. Good, good. Starting at an endpoint? Yes. Very good. Thank you, Oma. Yeah. Bridge to nowhere. Google that once and you'll be surprised what you find. All right. A well thought through design. Good, good. An alignment study. Very good, John. All right, good, good. These are all good. Very good. And sometimes you'll get, for example, an engineer or a technical person who will say, well, you know, it depends. You have to take a soil density sample and so on. Also, but the very, very, very first thing that you need, Han, very nice. The will to reach the other side. Mark, thank you. The very first thing is a reason. You need a reason to build the bridge. If you don't have a reason to build the bridge, as some of you said it, the will, for example, a good idea, yes. If you don't have a reason to build the bridge, there's no reason to build the bridge. You need to get from one side to another side, and then you build the bridge. In short, you need a why. Before embarking on any bridge building exercise, thoroughly establish what the why is. Um, Once you establish the why, we call it preparing the ground, finding the motivation. Remember, three things to learn: knowledge, skills, and motivation. Uh, you need to have a firmly established, what are we doing together? A very firm grounding. Some of you know this. This is Simon Sinek's golden circle model. I won't show you the film. It's about 20 minutes, and we're already almost out of time. But please, if you haven't seen this already, please look it up. It's an outstanding 20-minute look at why is the why important. Once you watch this, and once you begin to understand the why and how important the why is, then you'll start looking at everything you do in a different way. And also, you'll begin to understand how you manage people in a different way. Establishing the why is the single most important thing that you can do as a manager, as an employee, as a father in your family. Establishing the why, very, very important, regardless of what cultural environment you're in. Once the why is established, then you can continue in building the bridge. Objective mapping, establishing the why. These are all very important. And I have also a wonderful model. Unfortunately, I can't get into it today. We ate a valuable time in being offline. My apologies. This is one of the books, Leading Without Commanding. Philip Fernandrich is Belgian, and he has a wonderful model, wonderful technique for managing in the why, the input-output model. Sorry, it's up. In fact, we have 5 minutes, says Gita. In fact, if you'll go to the library of the Baak on the Baak website, you see a number of webinars, and one of my colleagues has discussed this very model, the input-output model, establishing the why, and so on, in her webinar. I just realized it's in Dutch. Sorry. Yeah, but there are other resources that you can find, a very worthwhile model. Good. That's bridging. Phase 3, very quickly, bridging is the absolute most difficult part of this 3-step exercise. Mapping, everybody does it all the time. And in fact, the resources that you can find for mapping are everywhere. For example, I've got another book. It's quite amusing because it's kiss, bow, or shake hands. This book is full of information about dealing with other cultures. But it's purely the knowledge. It's the facts. It's here is the culture. This book alone isn't going to do it for you. If you're a manager, if you're trying to get more out of your international team, you have to bridge and you have to integrate. What is integrating? Let me show you some steps. Some of these may look familiar to some of you, especially those of you who are dealing with change processes, organizational change. Consultants, for example, use many of these techniques because dealing with different cultures in an organizational setting, in a team setting, is a long-term proposition. It's not just something that you can send people to a training to and they're finished. To have real, sustainable change, you need to integrate. You need to map, to bridge, and to integrate. Constantly reinforcing the why, and not just yourself. Reinforcing means all over the organization, from the very top levels of the organization throughout. You should be able to walk through the halls of your organization and ask anybody, why are you here today? Why did you get out of bed? And hope that the answer isn't, well, if I don't get paid. Hopefully they say because, and they give you a beautiful answer about what the company's vision and mission is. If it only comes from you, then you run the risk of being the why guy. Yeah, here comes Steve. He's always asking why. Get the boss to talk about it. Get the CEO to talk about it. Get your stakeholders to start talking about it. This is why we're here, and this is why we are working together. The why is very important because it gives you it shows that you're part of a bigger picture. They say that people don't leave a company, they don't quit a company, they quit a boss. And it's mostly because they don't feel valued, they don't feel useful, they don't feel a part of the mission of the company. Best way to change that is to make sure that everybody understands why we're here together. So that's one of them. There are very many. Advertising successes, for example, having a cross-cultural coaching corner where we look at various elements of coaching. The results, these are just a few of the companies that I've worked with, both in my own company and through Baak. And these companies have dealt with cultural differences, cultural changes, and many of them have booked very clear, concrete results. I would love to discuss them with you at some time, and also discuss in more detail some of these models that we've looked at together. Yeah, I hope you've enjoyed it. This is my contact information if you want to contact me. As I mentioned, we'll be sending out more information. You'll be able to see this webinar, hopefully minus the gap in time, on the website probably next week. And we'll send you more information regarding the books and how you can explore more in culture. Thank you again very much for being here today and to giving me your attention and time. Thank you again, Peter, for your help and support. And thank you again for Baak for supporting us in this afternoon. So thank you and have a good day. Bye-bye.